Hey everyone, I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, coming at you guys today with another video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about 100 Thieves, and apparently they have signed a new top laner for their LCS 2024 Spring Split roster. Now, I'm going to need to explain a lot of context within this video surrounding just 100 Thieves in general for the LCS regarding them and their performance, not only just this year, but how they've completely failed, coming off their success stories from 2022 and 2021 and 2018, as well as explaining to you guys how the free open agency off-season period works. So I'm going to start with that point first because a lot of you guys might be new to this, so you just won't know. So let's start here. So pretty much after spring splits and after a League of Legends World Championship, you can officially sign a new player to your roster if you want to use them for, let's say, summer split, or let's say, obviously for next year when we're talking about another year for League of Legends, right? The reason why you cannot sign a new player after summer split is over for the major regions is because that could go along the lines of like, hey, an org could change their mind, even if you verbally agreed to join a team. There's just a huge mess with it, primarily after summer. That's the reason why Riot only allows that after the World Championship. And the reason why you can't sign players during Worlds for your next year roster, even if you think the roster you currently have isn't going to do anything, is because that could basically just, if the players that you currently have hear that could just utterly demotivate them from even wanting to even play the game with their current teammates, because they're factoring into themselves, hey, I'm not going to even be playing with this guy next year, actually. So there's big instances to the reason why you can't sign a player, obviously, after, a summer split, and you can't really officially sign them until after a World Championship is over. There's actual good reasoning behind it, and I don't like to give Riot a whole lot of credit, but I do not mind those things as stipulations for that, right? So, another key thing you guys need to know is only right now, during this period, you could verbally agree to join a team. And the reason why I use that word verbally is because basically the org and the people that are doing these off-season signings can just change their mind. And right now, if you are not a, League of Legends org that made the 2023 League of Legends World Championship, you could honestly just think about what you're going to be doing for 2024. And there's going to be a lot of time on your hands for that because you're not going to be competing until, obviously, late January, early February for next year, actually, okay? So we also have, after the League of Legends World Championship, pretty much ever since as earliest as they come, you can't actually officially sign a player until that open agency off-season period, which is always around the second week of November. It usually takes place on a Monday. That's the reason why for the last 8-9 years, on that second week of November, on that Monday specifically, you guys see all those big news pieces come out about big players signing with this org, this guy leaving for this org, going to that org. That can only officially happen during the second week of November, because that's the actual day it is allowed for a player to sign a contract officially and go to another team. That's not to say you won't actually, hear about a player moving somewhere else. This is just when it becomes official, obviously. Now, let's talk about 100 Thieves. So, 100 Thieves, just for 2023, didn't really do anything. They actually looked pretty bad for the most part, if we're being completely honest here. Now this is from an org that came into the LCS in 2018, made a finals, made worlds. They had a period where they kind of fell apart after that, essentially. Then come summer 2021, they won their first LCS title with Abadage, Ssumday, Closer, Huhi, and FBI, and then all those players would later on go on to do more greater things. Well, at least Abadage, Huhi, and FBI. Closer stayed on their roster and may or may not be their jungler for 2024 LCS Spring. They ended up letting Ssumday go to Evil Geniuses, actually. And you also have Abadage going to Excel. Then you had FBI also going to EG, later on NRG, and then Huhi went back to Golden Guardians as well. Remember, 100 Thieves has made 4 finals in their LCS tenure as an org, and they've won one of those finals, actually. They made back-to-back-to-back finals from summer 2021 to summer 2022. They had Papa Smithy. He ended up leaving the org. Reaper, who was C9's previous head coach, who I thought really, really helped refine their playstyle and give them a lot of edges in their gameplay. He ended up also leaving the org as well, and I don't know if they let him go or he just chose to leave himself. They also had Mithy, as their assistant coach in that aspect too. I'm not the hugest fan of Mithy as a coach per se, in terms of more or less a head coach, but remember, he was also on their roster too. Now, for the 2022 offseason, 100 Thieves decided to sign Bjergsen and Doublelift. Now, Doublelift had been retired. He hadn't played since like 2020 in general. He was retired for an entire year of, 2021 and 2022, actually. Bjergsen had become a head coach in 2021 after quote-unquote retiring in 2020. He played on Team Liquid in 2022. So they chose to sign them together. And already you're thinking, like, Bjergsen had already looked pretty darn bad by that point. And you just wouldn't know Doublelift's level because he hadn't played competitively in 2 years, right? Then they chose to sign Tenacity, who was on their academy team. This was a player that a lot of people were like, oh, he's got some talent to him. And they signed him, and they also bring up an academy player named Busio, who I think was a mid laner at a certain point, right? So you're already thinking, like, I don't know about this roster. Though in spring, I was skeptical, and I had them, like, 5th, actually. I thought that was an accurate placing for them. Then, when it came out to watching them play, it's like all the issues came out, right? Then, it got so bad, they lost 7 games straight, they threw out a coach, they brought in they made Nukeduck their head coach, right? Then, they won like 8 games in a row, they faced FlyQuest in the LCS 2023 Spring Split playoffs in round 1, actually. They get 3-0'd. There's kind of a close game 2 in there, but they get 3-0'd. Then they face Golden Guardians in the lower bracket of the LCS 2023 Spring Split playoffs. They have a nail-biting back and forth game 5. They end up losing that game 5, and they're out of the playoffs. They just straight up bombed out of the playoffs in the first 2 rounds. A really crushing series to FlyQuest. They got destroyed, and then one really, really close series against Golden Guardians. Now, some say that if they had beaten Golden Guardians, they would have actually made a miracle run to the finals, but you never know those things. Those are just obviously hypothetical theories that people have, right? So then, in summer, they chose to bring back Ssumday. Now remember, guys, they got rid of Ssumday in the 2022 offseason, and he went to Evil Geniuses, actually, right? So they get rid of Tenacity, they bring back Ssumday to try and have that synergy that Closer and Ssumday really had good going for them back in 2022. They let go of Bjergsen, they bring in Quid, and, Bjergsen technically wasn't let go. He just officially was like, I'm just done with League of Legends esports. So they had to get a new mid laner. They brought in Quid, who was just straight up, I don't know what he was trying to do, honestly. He was just so meh, actually. Like, he never really showed anything. It just kind of feels like he was just playing scared most of the time, and he wasn't really willing to take any risks at all. He basically was just a version of Vikla at a certain point, where he just wasn't doing anything. He wasn't really just being a player. Almost felt like he was just kind of there just to basically be like, hey, I'm not the worst guy, and I'm not the reason why we're losing the game. And it's like, you can't have that as a mid laner, right? They choose to keep Doublelift and Busio, and yeah, they ended up actually doing very, very, very bad in the LCS 2023 Summer Split regular season. They ended up getting 8th place, and they face off against Team Liquid, and then they lose to Team Liquid in the LCS 2023 Summer Split playoffs lower bracket 3-1, and then their season is over. So, for their performance in summer, Ssumday just had a pretty bad season overall. Closer, guys, I shit you not, Closer was I think Closer is absolutely fantastic, but this year in particular was really bad for him. Particularly in summer, where he literally was not even a factor until like they needed to win 1 game to get themselves into playoffs. The LCS was so bad that literally Closer himself, who had been irrelevant most of the split, literally got his first blood within like frickin' how many games? It was like 16 or some shit. Like, he was practically just irrelevant, Quid was just, I don't know, attempting to be a mid laner, and Doublelift and Busio, attempted to have synergy, which that never worked out. I think Double and Busio is just not a good bot lane. It's not even just that. The synergy is so off, and I personally think if Busio was on any other team as a support, he might actually have a better shot at actually showing off his skill sets. Now, if you're 100 Thieves and you went from making like 4 finals, worlds, you're thinking to yourself, we really did kind of fail for 2023. So them retooling their roster makes perfect sense, right? Now, they had Ssumday. They brought him over as like their franchise player in 2018. Let him go in 2022. Brought him back for one split, only to just let him go again for another guy, right? So here's what Alejandro Gomez put out right now. So you have sources. Sniper is expected to be the starting top laner for 100 Thieves LCS. According to sources familiar with the case, General Sniper has reached a verbal agreement with the US organization. He is 16 years old. Well, hopefully he'll be 17 by the end of this year, because I think the requirements to play in the LCS is you at least have to be 17 years old. So we'll have to see how that's going to play out. But would they, I believe LCS orgs would do this. They would throw away a player or get rid of a player just to bring him back, just to fail with him, just to let him go for another guy. It's like, hey, I think Ssumday had a bad split overall, and I think he didn't play that good on Evil Geniuses either, but would you take the risk of getting rid of him again, actually? So here was the actual article right here. And Sniper joined the 100 Thieves Academy in November 2021. He has been in their academy for all of 2022 and 2023. The player would be 17 years old in November this year. So this 2024 would be the first year he could compete in a top North American LOL competition if no rules change in the LCS. At the moment, the offseason has not started, and the teams have not started to move or are just asking over some players who are not under contract to prepare for the transfer market. Yeah, this is probably one of the earliest pieces of offseason news we're going to get. And, just looking at 100 Thieves' performance from just bolt splits, yeah, they need to really retool this roster. If you're asking me, I personally wouldn't just throw away Ssumday again, honestly, especially not for a new person, because this is the same issue that you ran into with Tenacity. It's like, yeah, you can bring up someone new, and I never hate the idea of bringing up someone new, but if someone new comes up and they have a lot of issues because they're new, you can't just be like, well, I didn't know this was going to happen. That's just going to go without saying. We have to bring up people new because they have to go through this, you have to go through your growing pains of being a professional, like the same way with APA, right? Team Liquid knew if they had kept Harry, they probably wouldn't have even made playoffs, let alone get as far in the playoffs as they did, let alone probably even make worlds, because Harry was fucking so bad that they were willing to just grab their academy mid laner APA and put him in. Now, the double-edged sword to that was he's gonna end up going through, these issues of first playoffs. How is he gonna end up, stepping up and, handling that pressure? And then if they move on further in the playoffs, how's he going to handle that? These are all things you have to factor in when you have someone new. There's nothing wrong with that. Some new rookies like him like APA, some do. Well, APA did pretty bad under these pressure scenarios, but just idealistically, when you're talking like other regions, when you bring up rookie players, some of them do very well under pressure and they're just fine with it. Some kind of just fumble out and play really bad. So this is what people need to understand when you're signing someone new. And then if he plays really bad, let's not get it twisted here. They're going to get rid of this guy. They did it with Tenacity, and then people were like, yeah, Tenacity was really bad. And I think Tenacity played bad himself too, but the thing here is, that's to be expected though. Do people think he was just going to come into the LCS and stomp people? You're out of your mind if you thought it was going to happen, And then when it turns out he wasn't as good as everyone made him out to be, they were like, yeah, just go back and get the other guy. It's like, fucking hell, man. So, I doubt Closer stays this year for 100 Thieves. I really do doubt that. Quid, I doubt they keep him given his performance, right? Doublelift is a guy where you could maybe attribute that's the reason why the team functioned the way they did, or they didn't look as they were even growing in terms of synergy, team chemistry, anything. Doublelift, as you guys know throughout the history, he's been a very I mean, I don't know if he's still having those certain player issues where he was quote unquote toxic, but yeah, I really don't know if he's super innocent in the line of like having why this team didn't perform the way it did, but I don't know if they're going to keep Doublelift. Would I get rid of Doublelift? I don't think he played particularly well, but like, I mean, who are you going to get better if you're in their spot, right? And I think, he showed some level of potential still there in him. Is he going to be at his peak level like he was back many years ago? Probably not. But if he's going to be relatively like a fourth place ADC at best, that's good overall. So I would personally keep him. But if he's a detriment to like team morale and no one can really get along, you might want to consider getting rid of him. I think you should get rid of Busio only if you are going to keep Doublelift, right? If you're getting rid of Doublelift, I'd say keep Busio on the added aspect that maybe with a different ADC, Busio might play better. But that is just obviously a flip of the coin, right? Now, if I'm looking at Busio as a support, he played pretty bad. Like, he was just bad for the most part. Nothing he really did ever was good. He had, like, maybe a few good games throughout the splits, right? So, yeah, 100 Thieves are going to have to do a lot of retooling to get back to the top like they were before. And is this a step in the right direction? They did this, guys, last year. Or this year they tried this, and it didn't work out. So, I don't know what's going to change this time around with this guy, where it's like the Tenacity and Busio situation we saw this year, where it looked like they probably just brought up some rookies that just weren't ready, obviously. But if you guys are 100 Thieves fans, let me know in the comment section below. Do you guys think this year was a failure for them? I think it was. This year, they just were complete garbage for the most part, And it was a lot of different factors into it, but, they're going to have to retool the roster to be hopefully more competitive for 2024 LCS Spring. And yeah, it's crazy how this was the first team we're talking about for the offseason that hadn't even started yet, actually. But don't get me wrong, there's going to be more news like this coming up very soon. So I'll see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Online Cinema Entertainment, your one place for online cinema. All right, see you guys later. Deuces. Peace.